Hey everyone, welcome back to HMBA 614, Health Services Management. I'm your professor, Professor Roberts, and you know, we're getting into about halfway through the course. So let's check out what we have in store for week 4. And once my computer decides to cooperate, all right. So week 4, our agenda is the reading. We always talk about the reading. That way, maybe I explained something you guys missed, or maybe you think about it a little bit differently than I explained, and that's part of the learning process. So we're going to talk about communication, everybody's favorite subject, right? And change. That's probably another one of everybody's favorite subject. Change is inevitable. It's just how you deal with it. And then we're going to talk about part 1 of the project portfolio. So with chapter 7 being communication, communication is essential to being a project manager. And in many other occupations, you're probably communicating 70, 80% of the time. And 20% is when you're on your own doing work. Now, think about all the time you might be doing work. Are you sending emails? Are you sending Teams messages, instant messages, Slack, all these various forms of communication? But what's the right method to use? So we're going to be developing this communication management plan in a further step, but we have to know who our stakeholders are. So how do they want to be contacted? So we have these methods. We can send emails, we can send press releases, we can have a meeting, we can have a large town hall style meeting, or whole sorts of ways to get that information out there. Could just be having a journalist come and make a news story, or having a video journalist come out and make a story for the nightly news. There's lots of different ways to get that information out there. I know in Morgantown, there's been a lot of talk about putting in a traffic circle on Greenbag Road. There's a lot of plans for it. There are a lot of people for it and against it. But I think the state Department of Highways is being very proactive with their communication. They've had multiple town hall meetings. They've answered the community's questions. And it's, to me, they're doing what they need to do. But think about your own organization. Is the communication adequate in your own organization? Are they using the right methods? Or do you feel like you're surprised every time something major is discussed or brought up in your organization? A lot of people are on that side of, whoa, what happened? When was this talked about? Who made this decision? How come I didn't hear about it until now? We all feel like that in our organizations. And it could be that we just didn't realize we were told, or we weren't told, or maybe we misunderstood how something was being communicated. So there's a lot of barriers there. If you think about the community at large, this is a healthcare MBA class, so everybody in here has a bachelor's level degree of education. But that's not true across the United States. A lot of organizations will write to a certain grade level, for example, the 10th grade level, because that's where most people in the United States have at least reached in education. And sometimes they have not made it through high school, or sometimes they've made it to a doctorate degree, and they're a genius, Mensa level genius of 140 plus IQ. But we have to realize who we're communicating with, and some of those barriers, especially in the medical field. There are so many terms that are usually Latin based that people don't understand. For example, rhinovirus. I mean, who's going to think the nose when you hear rhino? They're just going to think this big animal. And virus, I mean, hopefully they understand virus, but that's just, to my understanding, is a virus in your nose that usually causes runny noses and maybe something a little bit more if it doesn't go away, over a period of time. So, like, for example, my wife asked me that because she never saw that word before. But as soon as I explained it, she knew instantly what it was. And now that could be a language barrier because her primary language is not English. She learned another language growing up, and she learned English through school, just like many of you might have learned a foreign language in your education process. So we have these barriers that we have to acknowledge and plan for. So we have to look at our audience. So that's where this, excuse me, yeah, talking about communication, right? I'm twisting my words. Communication management plan. With this, we have to figure out, well, who are we going to talk to? I know that's my third bullet point. That should have been my first. But who are we going to be sharing this information with? How often are we going to share this information, and how do they want the information? And of course, what are we going to tell them through this communication? So if you think of an executive of a hospital, think president of the hospital or chief operations officer, chief medical officer. You know, with the exception of the chief medical officer, the chief executive officer might be a business person who has been in healthcare, gone up through that, always in an administrative role, no medical background other than what they might have experienced. Well, are you going to write it at the same level as, let's say, about a medical condition that might have to get the board's approval before it can be done because it might be experimental or insurance or liability, or it might have to go up for a higher level of review like that for approval. But are you going to put all those medical terms in it for the chief executive officer to read and hopefully understand if they don't have a medical background? And the same thing with any business. You want to make sure you write to your audience, like I mentioned in the barriers. But the CEO of a hospital system or even a single building hospital, how often are they going to want to know the status of your project? They're the CEO. They have so much that they're concerned with. Your project might be one of 200 things they're working on that week. So you want to be kind of short and simple. The executive summary is kind of what you might send them. Hey, the project's doing great. We're on budget. We're maybe a day or two ahead of schedule. This is what we've been successful with. This is our challenges, and this is how we're going to overcome the challenges. Done. Might be something simple like that. But if you're writing it for, let's say, a program manager, you're probably going to be a lot more detailed because a program manager is usually above a project manager and they want to know everything. But with that, they want to know everything because they're probably only seeing maybe, let's say, 10 projects or overseeing 10 at one time. So they have more time to delve in and understand what's going on in your project. They also, based on their experience on getting up to the project or program management level, might be that they can foresee future challenges based on what you're writing about are your current challenges. So they might be able to do that. So you might give them more information. Now, how much information would you give the public? If you think about, let's say, Ruby Memorial Hospital built the children's wing and it's operational. How much information was given to the public on that project? They're not given day-to-day updates. They're maybe given once a month press release. Hey, we're on schedule. This is our intended grand opening date. And you get close enough and like, hey, this date is firm. We are going to open on this date. We're looking for people to fill these positions. Various forms of getting the word out there. And you could start going through that process. But the public doesn't need to know that you're on budget or you're ahead of schedule or maybe a little bit behind. They just like, hey, we're going to have a children's hospital open up soon. Ask your friends who know that a children's wing was built. How much information did they get or did they want to get? And we can go the whole gamut. There's some people you're not going to tell certain information, but there's other people you're going to give all the information to. Let's say an accreditation body for pediatrics. There might be one. I'm not sure if there is one, but let's say there's a children's MRI machine. They probably has to get certified to be in the location it is. Like looking at the walls, make sure they're constructed properly, non-ferrous, so there's no magnetism there, and so on and so forth. You probably have to get that certified by some regulatory agency. X-ray equipment probably needs to get the same type of thing. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I'm just thinking of things that probably have regulations with them. So those agencies you're going to give more information to, but you're only going to give them information related to those specific areas. You're not going to give them information of the overall project. You might say, well, here's all our paperwork for this certification or accreditation or, to meet the regulatory requirements. this is when we start to plan using the machine. And that could be maybe a rough guess, but are they really going to get on you because you were a day or two off? The whole point is you don't use the machine on people, for example, before they give you the green light or whatever paperwork's needed. So communication plan is important. It's all about letting people know what's going on. And everybody has a different level, let's say a need to know or an expectation of what information they're going to get from you. So communication gets pretty complicated when you get down into the weeds, but that's a good overview. And as a project manager, you're probably communicating in some form or fashion, emails, meetings, Teams, Slack, whatever communication method, probably about 80% of your time. It's just, you're kind of like the air traffic controller. You're making sure information comes in and goes out. But it's good because you know what's going on. So when people ask you questions, you have the answer. All right. Chapter 8, change. Change is inevitable. Something's going to change in your project. It's just, do you have a formal structure on how to do that? And we have a change management plan that we use in project management, which outlines the process of how changes are submitted, reviewed, and approved, or disapproved, or modified. So communication is key. You don't want to wait till the absolute last minute to request a change. For example, if you know 3 months out that you're going to run out of your budget, start the process now, because it might take them 2 months to actually start looking at your issue and decide how much more money to give you. Or they will choose, well, we're going to reduce how much you have to do because we don't have any more money to give you. But all that needs to be documented. So when you have that documentation, and there is, I think in part 3, we're going to do a change request, one version of a change request. And you'll see it's simple, but yet it's complex. So the form is very simple, but the evaluation of the what's changing can be complex. And of course, once it's documented and submitted, it has to be reviewed. And chances are it's going to be approved, but depending on what it is, it could also be disapproved. I don't like to disapprove things when I was a project manager. I like to suggest modifications. That way we can still try to do what you wanted to do, but there's something that's preventing a full-on approval of it. And with that, it could be just modified a certain way, and now we have a approval. Excuse me. All right. So change is not always good, and it's not always bad. It can go from either extreme. It's just the biggest problem I see is waiting to the last minute for submitting these change things and then expecting it to fly through. You don't wait till the last minute on your driver's license renewal. Hopefully you don't. But if you do, you might not have a driver's license for a few days because it's expired and you don't have the new one, or you haven't submitted for a new one. Same thing with like renewing your license plate on your vehicle, or lots of other things. So there's a lot of a lot of timeliness is needed here. So change is inevitable. It's going to happen. I would say that there's no project that's ever been done that did not have a change that was actually a project. Now, you can have operations and, changes might not happen because you have a set process to follow. But because of the unique nature of projects, it can go almost any direction. We have an end goal in mind. That's what our project charter is trying to point us towards based off the business case. But going from the ideal and trying to, the ideal outcome and trying to get there is not always a clear path. It's not like following the yellow brick road in Wizard of Oz. We might have to cut through the forest and, go through this field to get back on track or whatnot, take a shortcut. But to do that, we need to put these changes in. So don't be afraid of change. Sometimes changes are good, but we have to realize and become very proficient at dealing with the bad changes too. All right, Portfolio 1. So several of you have sent me emails, and I'm sorry that I haven't gotten back to them as soon as I could. I've been dealing with a medical situation on my own and finally got to the point where I can make a video. due to some pharmacological assistance. Yeah, got some back issues going on, and finally been able to sit upright. We'll put it that way. So the business case. So overall, these four things are worth 200 points. In the past, I've had it where this was like worth 500 points. So I've cut that down because um, all of these are equally important, in my opinion. The business case, why are you doing it? How is this going to help the business? But actually, let me step back a moment. Your projects that you guys are doing this, you can either make it up, use something real that actually happened, or a combination of both of those. Maybe you saw a project happening, but it didn't do this. Well, maybe you can form a project to do that. Now think of what you have to do for that and how much work is involved with this portfolio. So don't try to do something that's small, because it's going to make it more difficult to do this. Where if you're doing a bigger project like building a pediatric wing on a hospital, it's going to be a lot easier to do a lot of these, where a small project might not be as easy, because there's only so much information and it might be so short. Also, the templates that I have provided in eCampus, that's what they are. They're just templates. If you go online and you find a better template that you want to use, go for it. Um, there's a website called Project Management, I want to say .org or .com. There's a lot of templates out there that other companies have submitted to share. Project management being a field where we learn off each other. So there might be a template that you find online that you want to use. Go for it. I have no problems with that. The templates are provided just to give you a starting point, or if you want to use them, go for it. You can add to the templates, you can take away from the templates, but make sure that you don't take away anything important. And if you do add anything, make sure it's adding value to the document. Okay. So if we go to the business case, I believe it was week 2 that I asked you guys to give your business case for getting your MBA. And a lot of you guys had some amazing responses to that. I'm so used to undergrad level responses to discussion posts being like 3 sentences, and they think that's good enough. You guys blew me away with your responses. Some of you guys want to move into administration. Some of you guys want to take that next step in your career, maybe become the chief of the department or whatnot, and you have to understand the financial side of a department rather than being so focused in only patient care at your current level. There's a lot of things you guys have mentioned that are all excellent reasons for getting an MBA. Why should we do the project? The business case. How is it going to benefit the organization? So last year, I believe Ruby was either had or was in the process of replacing an MRI machine, or annual maintenance or regular maintenance on an MRI machine, and it was going to be down for like 2 months. Is what I heard from students like you in the class. So one team actually did that, and they talked about why they needed to do that. I actually think it was an upgrade to the machine because it had some features that are becoming standard for radiologists or the appropriate person that reads MRI images could use to better diagnose certain conditions. I thought that was pretty amazing that that was happening, and that's something that Ruby was doing. So the business case, their machine was old. It needed to be updated for the new features. I believe it costs right around $2 million or a little bit above $2 million to do that kind of upgrade. And it also, if I remember right, they said it was faster. So even though the machine was going to be down for 2 months, it could make up for the loss of revenue, because hospitals are a business whether we like it or not. It can make up the revenue and exceed that within the first year of this upgrade. So they spent $2 million. It was also down for 2 months, so they lost whatever revenue they would have billed for those 2 months. And they would have made back the revenue within the first year of it back up and running. I thought that return on investment was amazing. And they went detailed in their financial budget projections. But the business case, what is the benefit? Why should it do what you're doing? How's the project going to reach a strategic goal or strategic objective to move the business forward? Now, of course, business projects don't always have the grandiose, we do this, we're going to, get 10% more revenue or whatnot. It could be a stepping stone to get to that ultimate goal. And the objectives are usually laid out in the project charter based on the business case. So the project charter is what gives that project manager the authority, written authority to do the project. There's some signatures. Usually there's the executive signature or the project champion. Maybe a program manager signature, a project manager signature, based on what they understand, or so they have the understanding of what needs to be done. And sometimes you'll get like your people listed that you're going to start off with, your budget, and so on and so forth. All this can be in the project charter, and there's usually a little bit of the business case in the project charter. So people who read the project charter can understand what you're trying to do, and this could be a document that you use to help support getting people from various departments, such as trying to get somebody from accounting or somebody from facilities or whatnot to be, let's say, 100% on your team for the duration of the project. This project charter gets people on board. It's communication. If we go back to, chapter 7, communication. So that project charter then leads us to hold on here. There we go. All right. Sorry about that, folks. My camera's flickering on me. At least that's what I see. All right. But that project charter can lead us to that work breakdown structure. So that work breakdown structure is where we, basically break down all the tasks that we need to do. So if we're going to replace an MRI machine, we're probably going to do something, let's say the coolant for the MRI machine. We're going to do something with the electrical for the MRI machine. Maybe there's some IT work that needs to be done. And then the actual work on the machine itself. Maybe while we're at it, we're going to do something to the walls. Maybe we're going to paint the room. Maybe we're going to replace the tile at the same time. Because a room is already down for this maintenance, why not do other regular facility maintenance at the same time? Maybe we got to do something with the HVAC system for the ventilation of the room, so on and so forth. So we can break those down into like major areas. And then let's say we are talking about the electrical. Well, we probably need to have a task of evaluating the current situation, understanding the requirements of the new technology, and then developing a plan to how we're going to meet those electrical needs and then do it. So let's say there's 4 areas there. Now, those can be all 4 separate activities or tasks under the electrical breakdown of the work. Under the regular facilities maintenance, maybe we do the painting, we rip out the tile because we're going to put new tile in to match the theme of the rest of the hospital. So it doesn't look like an old hospital, it looks like a new and modern facility. Maybe all this kind of stuff can be under a maintenance thing. And as a project manager, you might not be actually controlling this, but you just give facilities the green light to go ahead and do it between this date and this date. But you should still account for it in your project plan because, if they just laid tile, you probably don't want to be in there walking on it. Or if they just painted the wall, you don't want to be drilling holes in the wall for the electrical side. So all this kind of stuff can be identified in the work breakdown structure. And with that, we can go on to build the project budget. So remember that estimation method I recommended to you guys that I find really helpful. So we have the optimistic, the pessimistic, and then the most likely. But we put 4-time multiple on the most likely to give it a 2/3 weight when we factor in the most likely or the optimistic and pessimistic. And that will give us a good idea of a budget. Now, how do we get these numbers? Well, we talked about cost already, or estimation, I think the chapter was called, where we can do an analogous, where we're comparing to something else we've already done. We could do it a more formula-based thing, like, tile floor. How many square feet is going to be this much per square feet? Simple math problem. We could do things like that. So however you guys want to do it. I'm not going to force you guys down any path with the budget. so you guys can learn from this. Because if I tell you always do this, there's going to be that first time you try to do it, it's going to be the wrong way. I just know it, and that's my kind of luck. So, but these 4 documents are what I'm looking for you guys to submit by the deadline. It's worth 200 points overall, and I'm going to equally weight it, so 50 per document. And one person just needs to submit it for your entire team, just like the papers. I would encourage you to submit them as separate documents. If, like, for example, the budget, if you do that in Excel, please submit it as an Excel file. Don't try to make it a PDF. I have no problem if you guys want to submit it as a Word document or Excel or anything like that. I'm not that picky. If you do want to make it a PDF, please make sure it's readable. If you guys have ever seen a Excel document converted to a PDF, you guys realize how poorly Excel does that. The one thing I ask you guys not to do is to submit any Apple file versions, such as the Pages or whatever the other versions are. For whatever reason, eCampus or Blackboard is the provider, cannot convert those files into a viewable format in the system like you can the Word documents or the Microsoft versions and the PDFs. So please submit as you can just upload the files themselves, no conversion, or you can make them PDFs. But please, if you do make them PDFs, make sure that they're readable. If you guys have any questions on this, please send me an email. I'm going to get to emails today since I'm upright, and I'm going to take advantage of that while the medication's working. And yeah, that should do it for part 1. Now, all this project portfolio is building up essentially a project management plan. So these are all just little sections of the overall plan. And when you put them all together, it's kind of like your reference guide as you move forward through the project. So when we get to the communications management plan, you've already worked through that. You know how to communicate with what kind of information to give people based on their classification. You know, like if they're a member of the public, you're going to give them this information. If they are a media or news agency, you're going to give them this information, but not this information. If they're the executive level, in your organization, you're going to give them this information, but you're probably not going to give them all the details. And so this project portfolio, hopefully you guys will enjoy doing it because it does get into all these details and we figure things out before we need them in the project. Because trying to fly by the seat of your pants in a project, while it happens, is not a very good feeling when you're in a project. Because you feel like you're just controlling a 3-ring circus and you might start having that imposter syndrome or imposter disorder where you feel like why are you there? You're not qualified. You guys are qualified. It's just making sure you do all the pre-work ahead of time so you don't have to panic later when something comes up. So once again, I appreciate you guys coming or watching this video, and I look forward to seeing what you guys submit. And also I'm going to be grading your, I believe, paper 2. And you guys have impressed me with paper 1 with the PERT system, and paper 2 should be the same. I expect the same out of you guys. You guys impressed me so much in paper 1, so that set a high standard. But I'm going to go ahead and stop talking now, and I appreciate you guys, and I look forward to moving through week 4 and on to the rest of the semester. So take it easy, and we'll see you next time.